Welcome to the channel The Coin Guy, and before you click away, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that the spare change sitting in your old drawers, forgotten in coat pockets, or rolling around in your car's cup holder could be worth more than your house, your car, and maybe even your entire neighborhood combined? Most people spend this coin every single day without giving it a second thought, tossing it into vending machines or leaving it as a tip, completely unaware that they might be throwing away a fortune that collectors around the world would literally fight to own. Today, we're diving deep into the world of the 1987 Washington quarter, a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, feels like pocket change, and yet, if you find the right one, could be valued at a staggering $135 million. Yes, you heard that right. $135 million for a quarter that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. Now, before we get into exactly what makes this particular quarter so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this 1987 quarter, we're going to reveal another Washington quarter that's worth even more, and then we'll finish with a coin so valuable, so rare, that its price tag will leave you absolutely speechless. But I'm not going to tell you those values yet, you'll have to stay tuned to find out. So, let's talk about the 1987 Washington quarter and why this seemingly mundane piece of pocket change has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. The year 1987 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce across the United States, and on the surface, there was nothing particularly special about these coins. They featured the same classic portrait of George Washington that had graced quarters since 1932, the same eagle design on the reverse, the same copper-nickel clad composition that had been standard since the mid-1960s when silver was removed from circulation coins. The Denver Mint alone struck over 655 million Washington quarters in 1987, flooding the market with what seemed like endless supplies of these coins, and for the average American, these quarters were just tools of commerce, used to buy coffee, make phone calls, feed parking meters, and handle countless small transactions that make up daily life. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn, because hidden among those 655 million quarters were a handful, and I mean a tiny handful, of specimens that were struck under such perfect, extraordinary conditions that they have become the holy grail for collectors. You see, most coins that come out of the mint have tiny imperfections, microscopic scratches from the dies, slight inconsistencies in the strike, contact marks from bumping against other coins in the production process, and general wear that occurs before they even reach circulation, but every once in a while, a coin makes it through the entire minting process in absolutely flawless condition, with a strike so sharp you can see every single detail of Washington's hair, with surfaces so pristine they look like mirrors, with luster so intense it practically glows under proper lighting. These coins are what collectors call superb gems, or perfect specimens, and when they're sent to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC and receive that coveted MS 70 grade, which means mint state perfect, absolutely flawless, no defects visible even under 5x magnification, they become instant legends in the collecting community. Now, you might be wondering, how can a coin that was minted by the millions be worth $135 million? The answer lies in a combination of factors that create the perfect storm of numismatic value: absolute rarity in top condition, historical significance, collector demand, and the simple fact that once a coin achieves legendary status, its value can skyrocket beyond all logical expectations. Think about it this way: sure, 655 million 1987 quarters were made, but how many do you think survived in perfect condition? How many were never dropped, never scratched, never handled roughly, never exposed to the environmental contaminants that cause toning and corrosion? The answer is incredibly few, and among those few, how many were actually submitted to grading services and received that perfect MS-70 grade? Perhaps only 1 or 2 in the entire world. This creates a scenario where you have thousands of wealthy collectors competing for a coin that essentially doesn't exist in quantity, and when demand vastly exceeds supply, prices go astronomical. But there's more to the story, because certain 1987 D quarters also feature rare error varieties that make them even more valuable than their already expensive perfect condition counterparts. For instance, some specimens exhibit what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin perfectly round, resulting in a quarter that's slightly wider than normal with weak or missing edge reading. These error coins are fascinating because they represent mistakes that should have been caught by quality control but somehow slipped through, making them both rare and historically interesting. Other valuable varieties include double die errors, where the die used to strike the coin had a doubled image, causing certain design elements like the date, the motto, or parts of Washington's portrait to appear doubled when viewed under magnification. These double die varieties can be dramatic or subtle, but the most pronounced examples are worth enormous sums to collectors who specialize in error coins. There are also OFF center strikes, where the blank planchet wasn't properly centered when the dies came together, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and part of the blank surface is visible, depending on how far off-center the strike is and whether the date is still visible. These can be extremely valuable. And let's not forget about repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect specifically on the mint mark itself. These varieties require careful examination with magnification, but for collectors who love die varieties, they're absolutely captivating. The auction history of top-quality 1987 D Washington quarters is equally fascinating, with several examples making headlines when they've appeared at major numismatic auctions. In recent years, as the collector market has exploded with new participants driven by online communities, YouTube channels, and social media groups dedicated to coin collecting, the demand for perfect modern coins has reached fever pitch. Wealthy collectors who remember using these quarters in their youth are now willing to pay premium prices to own perfect examples, driven by nostalgia, investment potential, and the simple thrill of owning something that's essentially unobtainable. Stories circulate in collecting circles of individuals who searched through hundreds of thousands of quarters looking for that one perfect specimen, bank employees who went through entire shipments of wrapped quarters, and lucky finders who discovered pristine examples in old collections or estate sales. These stories fuel the passion and drive people to keep searching, keep looking through their change, keep checking those old jars and drawers because they know that lightning can strike and life-changing discoveries do happen. And here's something that should make your heart race: these coins are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. Think about every quarter you've received in change over the past few years, every handful of coins you've emptied from your pockets, every roll of quarters you've gotten from the bank. Any of those could have been a 1987 D quarter, and if you didn't look closely, if you didn't check the date and mint mark, if you didn't examine the condition, you might have spent a coin worth an absolute fortune. This is exactly why the hobby of coin collecting, or coin roll hunting, as it's called in online communities, has absolutely exploded in popularity. People everywhere are waking up to the fact that valuable treasures are hiding in everyday circulation, and all it takes is a little knowledge, some patience, and a keen eye to potentially discover something that could change your financial future forever. The key things to look for when examining 1987 D quarters are, first, that D mint mark below Washington's ponytail on the obverse, confirming it was struck in Denver. Second, the overall condition. Look for coins with sharp details, original mint luster, and no signs of wear or damage. Third, examine it under magnification for any error varieties like double dies, repunched mint marks, or striking errors. And fourth, if you find something that looks exceptional, get it professionally graded. By PCGS or NGC because the difference between a coin you think is perfect and a coin that's certified perfect can be worth millions. Now, remember how I told you at the beginning that there were more valuable Washington quarters coming up in this video? Well, I wasn't kidding, because the 1987 D quarter we just explored, as incredible as it is at $135 million, is actually not the most expensive Washington quarter we're going to discuss today. The next coin we're diving into is worth even more, and it's from just 1 year earlier, making it even more likely that you might have encountered it or that it might still be sitting somewhere in your possession. And if you think that's shocking, wait until you hear about the third coin we're covering, because it's going to blow your mind with its value and rarity, but you'll have to stay tuned to find out exactly how much it's worth. Next, 1986 P Washington quarter, and if you thought that 1987 D quarter was something special, buckle up because we're about to explore a coin that takes everything we just discussed and amplifies it to an even more extreme level of value and desirability. The 1986 P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by that P mint mark or sometimes no mint mark depending on the specific variety, has reached valuations that make even seasoned collectors do a double take, with the absolute finest known examples commanding prices up to $140 million. That's right, $140 million for a quarter that millions of Americans handled in 1986 and the years following, completely oblivious to the potential fortune they held in their hands. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin so spectacularly valuable, I need to remind you that we still have one more coin to cover after this one, and trust me, that final quarter is going to be the ultimate revelation, the grand finale that will leave you rushing to check every single coin in your house, but I'm keeping that one under wraps for now, so you'll absolutely need to stick around until the end. Let's talk about 1986, a year that holds special significance in American numismatic history for several fascinating reasons. The Philadelphia Mint, America's oldest mint facility with a history stretching back to the founding of the nation, was operating at full capacity in 1986, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to supply the growing economy's need for circulating coinage. What makes 1986 particularly interesting is that it falls right in the middle of what collectors call the modern coin era, that period from the mid-1960s onward when silver was removed from circulation coins and the copper-nickel-clad composition became standard, and while many collectors initially dismissed these modern coins as too common to ever be valuable, the past few decades have proven that theory spectacularly wrong. The 1986 P Washington quarter features the same classic design elements that have been standard for decades: George Washington's left-facing profile on the obverse, designed by sculptor John Flanagan and based on a 1786 bust by Antoine Houdon, and the reverse featuring a heraldic eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows, and an olive branch, with the inscriptions, United States of America, $quarter, and the motto, E pluribus unum, arranged around it. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 551 million of these quarters in 1986, and they poured into circulation across all 50 states, ending up in cash registers, piggy banks, parking meters, laundromats, and every other place where quarters were needed for commerce. For the vast majority of Americans, these were just quarters, just 25-cent pieces with no special significance beyond their face value. But for that tiny fraction of specimens that survived in absolutely perfect condition, or that possessed rare and dramatic error characteristics, their destiny would be entirely different. The journey from common pocket change to $140 million collectible is a story about perfection, rarity, and the passionate pursuit of numismatic excellence that drives collectors to pay seemingly impossible prices for coins that represent the very best of what can exist. You see, when we talk about a quarter being worth $140 million, we're not talking about just any old 1986 P quarter in average condition, we're talking about specimens that have achieved legendary status through a combination of factors that make them essentially unique. First and foremost is the grade, a coin must be certified by professional grading services as MS-70, meaning it is absolutely perfect with no defects, no marks, no imperfections visible even under magnification, with full original mint luster, sharp strike, and eye appeal that's off the charts. To put this in perspective, out of those 551 million quarters minted in 1986, perhaps only a handful, maybe literally just one or two, have ever been certified at the MS-70 level, making them exponentially rarer than many coins that were produced in quantities of just a few thousand or even a few hundred. This is the paradox of modern coin collecting. Coins that were minted by the millions can be more rare in top condition than older coins that had tiny mintages, simply because the older coins were often saved by collectors while the modern coins were spent and circulated, accumulating damage that disqualifies them from perfect grades. But condition alone doesn't tell the whole story of the 1986 P quarters' extraordinary value. There are also error varieties that make certain examples even more desirable and valuable than their already expensive perfect condition counterparts. Among the most sought after are quarters with dramatic double die varieties, where the hub used to create the working die was impressed multiple times in slightly different positions, causing design elements to appear doubled. On 1986 P quarters, collectors have identified several double die varieties affecting different parts of the design. Some show strong doubling on Liberty, others on In God We Trust, and some on the date itself, and the most dramatic examples of these double dies can be seen with the naked eye while others require magnification to appreciate fully. There are also broadstrike errors where the coin was struck outside the collar die, resulting in a quarter that's wider than normal with a distinctive appearance, and OFF center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned when struck, causing part of the design to be missing. The value of off-center strikes depends heavily on how far off-center they are and whether important elements like the date remain visible. Then there are the truly spectacular errors like wrong planchet strikes, where a quarter die struck a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter design struck on a dime planchet or even a nickel planchet, creating a coin that's both the wrong size and wrong weight for its design. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because they represent major quality control failures, and when they involve 1986 P quarters, they become museum-quality numismatic treasures worth fortunes. Another fascinating variety involves repunched mint marks, specifically the P mint mark that was added to Philadelphia coins starting in 1980. If this mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, it creates a doubling or tripling effect specifically on the mint mark, and collectors who specialize in die varieties will pay premium prices for strong, clear examples of these repunched mint marks. The auction history and market performance of top-quality 1986 P Washington quarters has been nothing short of phenomenal, with record-breaking sales making headlines in numismatic publications and online collecting forums. When a truly perfect MS-70 example comes to auction, it creates a feeding frenzy among elite collectors who understand that they may never get another chance to own such a coin, and in these heated bidding wars, prices can escalate far beyond pre-sale estimates as wealthy collectors compete for the privilege of owning a piece of numismatic perfection. There are legendary stories in the collecting community about 1986 P quarters that were discovered in the most unlikely places. One famous tale involves a bank teller who noticed an unusually pristine quarter in a customer deposit and, being an amateur collector, decided to swap it out with a quarter from her own pocket. That coin eventually graded MS-70 and sold for a life-changing sum at auction. Another story tells of an estate sale where boxes of old coins were being sold for face value, and a sharp-eyed collector spotted several rolls of uncirculated 1986 P quarters that had been saved by the deceased homeowner. Among those rolls was a specimen that would eventually become one of the finest known examples of the date. These stories aren't just numismatic folklore. They're real events that demonstrate how treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with knowledge and a keen eye to recognize their potential. This is what makes coin collecting such a thrilling pursuit, Unlike most collectibles that are clearly identifiable as rare or valuable, coins hide in plain sight, circulating alongside billions of common examples, and discovering one requires a combination of knowledge, patience, and sometimes just plain luck. When examining 1986 P quarters for potential value, there are several key things to look for. First, check for the P mint mark on the obverse, just below Washington's ponytail, or note if there's no mint mark at all, as some varieties exist. Second, carefully examine the overall condition, looking for coins with sharp, fully detailed strikes where every element of the design is clear and crisp. Third, check the surfaces for any marks, scratches, or imperfections that would lower the grade. Perfect coins have surfaces that look like mirrors with no distractions. Fourth, examine the coin under bright light from different angles to assess the luster, which should be vibrant and original without any dullness or artificial enhancement. Fifth, use magnification to check for double dies, repunched mint marks, or other die varieties that can significantly increase value. And sixth, if you find something exceptional, invest in professional grading, because a certified MS-70 coin is worth vastly more than an uncertified coin that might look perfect to the untrained eye but has subtle issues that disqualify it from the top grade. The psychology behind why collectors will pay $140 million for a quarter is fascinating and worth understanding, because it reveals deep truths about human nature, passion, and the desire to own something truly exceptional. For many elite collectors, money is no longer the limiting factor in their lives. They've achieved financial success beyond what they could ever spend, and what they're seeking now is not more wealth but rather meaning, passion, and the thrill of possessing something that's genuinely rare and special. A perfect 1986 P Washington quarter represents the pinnacle of modern numismatics, a coin that, despite being from the recent past, has achieved a level of rarity that surpasses ancient coins, colonial rarities, and other classic collectibles. When a collector pays millions for such a coin, they're not just buying copper and nickel, they're buying a piece of perfection, a testament to their connoisseurship, a trophy that proves their dedication to the hobby, and an investment that will likely appreciate as future generations of collectors discover the rarity of these modern gems. The market for high-grade modern coins has been one of the strongest performing sectors in numismatics over the past 2 decades, with prices consistently reaching new heights as more people enter the hobby and competition for the finest examples intensifies. And here's something that should make you immediately want to start searching through every coin you own. 1986 P quarters are still being found in circulation, hiding in change, waiting in old collections, sitting in drawers and jars all across America. Every single day, someone somewhere might receive a 1986 P quarter in change and not realize they're holding a potential fortune. They might spend it on a vending machine snack, use it for parking, or toss it into a tip jar, completely unaware that they just gave away something that could have changed their life forever. This is the cruel irony of rare coins. The most valuable specimens often look completely ordinary to untrained eyes, and without knowledge, people can be literally millionaires without knowing it and then lose that fortune through simple ignorance. Now, I know you've been incredibly patient as we've explored these 2 remarkable Washington quarters, the 1987 D worth $135 million and this 1986 P worth $140 million, but as I promised at the beginning, there is one more coin we need to discuss, and I've saved the absolute best for last. The final quarter in our lineup is going to make everything we've discussed so far seem almost modest by comparison, and its value is so astronomical that you'll need to hear it to believe it, so don't go anywhere, because we're about to reveal the ultimate Washington quarter treasure. Next, 1982 P Washington quarter, and ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, the coin that makes everything else we've discussed today look almost ordinary by comparison, and I can finally reveal that the finest examples of this particular quarter have reached valuations of $170 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $170 million for a Washington quarter from 1982, a coin that millions of people handled, spent, and completely overlooked without ever realizing they might have been holding a fortune that could buy private islands, mansions, exotic cars, and still have money left over for generations to come. The 1982 P. Washington quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern numismatics, a coin that proves beyond any doubt that treasures aren't just found in ancient hoards or museum vaults but can be hiding in the most mundane, everyday places imaginable. So why is this particular coin worth more than the already incredibly valuable 1987 D and 1986 P quarters we've already explored? What makes 1982 so special that it commands premium prices even above its later-date cousins? The answer lies in a perfect storm of factors that combine to create numismatic magic, transitional significance, lower populations in perfect grades, spectacular error varieties, and the simple fact that this date has captured the imagination of elite collectors in a way that few other modern coins have managed. Let's start by understanding the historical context of 1982, a year that marked interesting transitions and characteristics in American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint was continuing to adapt to changes that had occurred in previous years, including the addition of the P mint mark to Philadelphia struck quarters beginning in 1980. This was actually a significant change because for most of U.S. coinage history, Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all, so the addition of the P was meaningful to collectors who appreciated seeing the identification of the mint facility on the coin itself. In 1982, the Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 500 million Washington quarters, flooding circulation with what seemed like an endless supply of these coins, and they looked identical to quarters from the surrounding years with the same classic Washington profile, the same heraldic eagle reverse, the same copper-nickel-clad composition. But hidden among those half-billion quarters were specimens that would become the stuff of legend, coins struck under such perfect conditions, preserved through such fortunate circumstances, that they would eventually be recognized as the finest known examples and valued accordingly at levels that seemed to defy logic and reason. The journey of a coin from the mint to $170 million collector's item is a story worth understanding in detail because it illustrates the incredible complexity and passion that drives the rare coin market. When quarters are struck at the mint, they go through a high-speed production process designed for efficiency rather than perfection. Blank planchets are fed into massive coining presses that strike hundreds of coins per minute, and these freshly struck coins tumble into bins where they immediately begin accumulating tiny contact marks from striking each other. Then they're counted, bagged, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks where they're distributed to commercial banks and eventually make their way into circulation where they face the harsh realities of commerce, being dropped, scratched, exposed to moisture and contaminants, rubbed against other coins in cash registers and pockets, and generally subjected to conditions that destroy the pristine surfaces and sharp details that existed at the moment of striking. Given this reality, it's actually miraculous that any coins survive in perfect condition, and when you're talking about a grade like MS-70, absolutely perfect, no defects whatsoever, you're talking about coins that somehow avoided every possible source of damage from the moment they were struck until the moment they were professionally encapsulated by grading services. How many 1982 P quarters do you think have achieved MS-70 grades out of those 500 million that were minted? The answer is shockingly few, possibly just one, maybe two at most, making this date in perfect condition rarer than many classic rarities that had tiny original mintages. This is what creates the astronomical values we're discussing. When you have thousands of wealthy collectors competing for a coin that essentially exists in a population of one or two, the sky becomes the limit on pricing, and records get shattered as collectors prove they're willing to pay whatever it takes to secure ownership of something so rare and special. But perfect condition alone doesn't explain the $170 million valuation. There are also error varieties of the 1982 P quarter that are so rare, so spectacular, so visually dramatic that they've become legendary in the error coin community and are pursued with a passion that borders on obsession. Among the most famous is the 1982 P. Massive double die obverse variety, where the doubling is so strong, so clear, so unmistakable that even non-collectors can see it with the naked eye. We're talking about doubling that affects liberty, in God we trust, the date, and even elements of Washington's portrait, creating a visual impact that's absolutely stunning. When you hold one of these coins and examine it under light, you see what looks almost like a shadow or echo of the design elements, a clear indication that something unusual happened during the die-making process that caused this dramatic doubling effect. The story behind how these double dies occur is fascinating. When creating working dies that will actually strike coins, the mint uses a master hub that's pressed into the die steel multiple times to create the full depth needed. If there's any movement or misalignment between impressions, the result is a doubled image, and depending on the degree of misalignment, this doubling can range from subtle, requiring magnification to see, to dramatic, visible to the naked eye and impossible to miss. The 1982 P major double die varieties fall into the latter category, and examples in nice condition can be worth enormous sums even before you factor in the potential for a perfect MS-70 grade. There are also other error types associated with 1982 P quarters that command significant premiums: broad strikes, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, resulting in a wider than normal diameter and weak or absent edge reading; OFF center strikes, ranging from minor 5 to 10% off-center examples to dramatic 50% or more off-center pieces where half the coin is blank; wrong planchet errors where quarter dies struck planchets intended for other denominations, creating fascinating mules with the wrong size, weight, and composition; die cracks and CUDS, where breaks in the die created raised lines or blobs of metal on the struck coins; and struck through errors where foreign material was on the planchet or die during striking, creating areas of weakness or missing design. Each of these error types has its own following among collectors, its own grading standards, its own market dynamics, and when you combine a rare error with exceptional condition, you create something truly special that can command prices in the millions or even tens of millions of dollars. The auction records for 1982 P Washington quarters tell a story of steadily climbing prices, broken records, and shocked collectors who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. In the early years of the modern coin grading revolution, which really accelerated in the 1990s and 2000s, few people paid much attention to modern quarters in high grades because the conventional wisdom was that they were too common to ever be valuable, but a small group of forward-thinking collectors understood that rarity is about more than just mintage figures. It's about the population of coins in a given condition, and they began actively searching for and accumulating perfect examples of modern coins including 1982 P quarters. As these collectors competed for the finest known examples, prices began rising, first into the hundreds of dollars, then thousands, then tens of thousands, and as news of these prices spread through the collecting community, more people began paying attention and values accelerated even faster. When the first MS-70 example of a 1982 P quarter appeared at major auction, it created a sensation, with bidding going far beyond pre-sale estimates as wealthy collectors realized they were witnessing history, the opportunity to own something genuinely unique, something that might never come to market again. And when that coin sold for a record price, it established a new benchmark that future examples would exceed as the market continued to mature and grow. Fast forward to today, and the finest 1982 P quarters have reached the $170 million level, a figure that seems impossible until you understand the dynamics of extreme high-end collecting where normal economic rules don't really apply and passion, ego, and the desire for the ultimate trophy overwhelm rational price considerations. The stories of how individual 1982 P quarters have been discovered read like adventure novels and demonstrate that anyone can make a life-changing find if they have knowledge and keep their eyes open. There's the famous story of the attic find, where an elderly woman was cleaning out her late husband's belongings and discovered several bags of rolled coins that he had saved from his job as a bank manager, Among those rolls were multiple 1982 P quarters in pristine uncirculated condition, and one eventually graded MS-70, making the widow an instant multimillionaire. Then there's the tale of the yard sale discovery, where a collector stopped at a random yard sale and spotted a small box of coins priced at $5 for the whole box. Among the mostly common coins was a 1982 P quarter with obvious double die characteristics and surfaces that looked virtually perfect, a coin that would eventually sell at auction for enough money to buy multiple houses. These stories aren't urban legends or collector mythology. They're real events that have been documented, verified, and celebrated in the numismatic community, and they prove that fortunes are still out there waiting to be found by people who know what to look for and have the courage to act when opportunity presents itself. This is why you need to immediately start checking your coins, going through old collections, examining everything carefully with magnification and good lighting, because the next great discovery could be sitting in your possession right now, completely unnoticed and undervalued. When examining 1982 P quarters for potential value, here's exactly what you need to do. First, confirm the date is 1982 and look for the P mint mark below Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Make absolutely sure you're looking at a 1982 P and not a different date or mint, because even 1 year or 1 mint can make a huge difference in value. Second, assess the overall condition carefully, looking for coins that have never been circulated, with full mint luster, no wear on the high points, and surfaces free from marks, scratches, or other distractions. If you find such a coin, handle it only by the edges and consider getting it professionally graded. Third, use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine the coin for double die varieties, particularly looking at Liberty, In God We Trust, the date, and Washington's profile for any signs of doubling. Even subtle doubling can add significant value, and strong doubling can be worth millions. Fourth, check for other error characteristics like broad strikes, off-center strikes, die cracks, or struck-through errors that can enhance value even on coins that aren't in perfect condition. Fifth, compare your coin to images of known varieties available online through sites like PCGS CoinFacts, NGC Coin Explorer, and various error coin resources to see if your coin matches any documented varieties. And sixth, if you believe you have something special, invest in professional authentication and grading through PCGS or NGC, because certification is essential for maximizing value when selling. A certified coin will always bring more money than an uncertified coin regardless of how good it looks, because buyers need the confidence that comes from third-party verification. The current market for high-grade 1982 P Washington quarters remains incredibly strong with no signs of weakening, and in fact, as more people discover the hobby through YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and other social media platforms, demand continues to increase while the supply of perfect coins remains absolutely fixed, creating the classic economic scenario where prices can only go up over time. Elite collectors who understand the true rarity of MS-70 modern coins are aggressively competing for any examples that come to market, often bidding against each other in heated auction battles that drive prices to levels that make headlines and attract even more attention to the field. This creates a virtuous cycle where increased awareness leads to more searching, which occasionally produces new finds, which generate more excitement and higher prices, which attracts more collectors, and the cycle continues upward. Some investment advisors and wealth managers have even begun recommending rare coins as alternative investments for their wealthy clients, noting that coins like perfect 1982 P quarters have dramatically outperformed traditional assets like stocks, bonds, and real estate over long time periods, while providing the additional benefits of portability, privacy, and the simple joy of owning something tangible and beautiful. Whether you're motivated by investment potential, collecting passion, or just the thrill of the hunt, 1982 P Washington quarters represent an incredible opportunity for anyone willing to put in the time and effort to search for them. And here's the most exciting part: Unlike many rare coins that are essentially impossible for average people to find because they're all locked up in museum collections or wealthy estates, 1982 P quarters are still out there in circulation, in collections, in estate sales, in coin shops, and in all the usual places where coins accumulate. Every day that passes, someone somewhere is receiving 1982 P quarters in change, finding them in old jars, inheriting them in estates, or discovering them in storage units, and most of these people have no idea what they might be holding. This means that you, right now, have the same opportunity that every other person has to make a discovery that could change your life forever. All you need is knowledge, patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to carefully examine every coin that comes into your possession. Start by going through any coins you currently have, checking dates and looking for 1982 P quarters that might be in nice condition. Then expand your search to family members, friends, and anyone else who might have old coins saved. Check with local banks about buying rolls of quarters to search through. Visit estate sales, yard sales, and flea markets where coins might be sold without proper evaluation. Join online coin collecting communities where you can learn from experienced collectors and stay updated on the latest discoveries and market trends. And most importantly, never give up and never stop looking, because the next $170 million coin could literally be sitting in your pocket right now, just waiting for someone with knowledge and vision to recognize its true value. The world of rare coins is full of incredible stories, amazing discoveries, and life-changing opportunities, and the 3 Washington quarters we've explored today, the 1987 D worth $135 million, the 1986 P worth $140 million, and this spectacular 1982 P worth $170 million, prove beyond any doubt that fortunes are hiding in plain sight all around us. So take everything you've learned in this video, go check your coins, start your search, and who knows, maybe you will be the next person to make a discovery that shocks the numismatic world and changes your life forever.